Hi everyone, it's time for my May 2021 bullet journal setup. Let's get started with the cover page. I'm writing the title in a round font. This month's theme ended up being a lemon and orange marmalade. I was first thinking about making this an only lemon marmalade theme, so I was drawing only lemons at first. Later I changed it to an orange and lemon marmalade theme. For the lemons, I drew some whole ones, half sliced, wedges, and many different sizes and shapes to add variety. I tried not to put two of the same kind next to each other. Drawing the sectors of the lemon was probably the hardest part. I tried not to leave too big of a gap in between the sectors of the lemon and orange. It's definitely not realistic, but I still think it's cute. In the middle of the page, I'm drawing a jar of marmalade. I tried to make it look like a homemade jam, so it has a cloth lid secured with twine instead of those plastic hard lids. Now I'm adding a plain checkered pattern in the corners of the page. I just used a pink marker and created one stroke line in one direction. Then I went back in the opposite direction and overlapped it to create darker squares in the lines. I also put this design on the lid of the marmalade jar. I'm using this darker pink to add shadows to the cloth because I didn't want it to look too flat. As I mentioned before, I didn't realize that this was going to be an orange marmalade theme yet, so I went in with a yellow marker while leaving some highlights. I didn't have a plan for coloring, I'm just winging it. So now I'm using a yellowy orange to color the fruit. Okay, at this point I kept coloring more and I realized this was starting to look a lot more like an orange. How about I make this theme into a lemon and orange theme? So that's how my mistake ended up becoming the theme for this month. I used a light orange color but left some spaces in the yellow. Then I used darker orange colors around the edges and in some spots. I went over the whole thing with yellow to help everything blend together. It seems like a really smooth blend, but it's actually not. I just used many different colors and shades, which makes it seem like it's blending. Make sure to use at least 3 colors of the same shade if you want it to look like a smooth blend. If you don't have a darker orange color, just layer one color multiple times to get it darker. This is what I did for the darker orange spots in the marmalade. Be careful with layering though, because it could eat through the paper if you do it too much. I'm using a white gel pen to make the highlights on the May. It worked on the black letters, but the highlights weren't showing up when I put it on the jar, so I decided to pull out my paints. I mixed yellow and white acrylic paint to make a pale yellow color. Then I just started to paint as highlights in the marmalade. This works a lot better than the white gel pen. I've always had a problem with my white gel pen not being opaque enough. I added the paint to the other fruit as well. The paint dried really quickly since it's acrylic paint, so I didn't have to worry about it smearing. Now the fruits look 10 times yummier. And now let's finish this page off with some washi tape. I really love the finished result, and this page was super fun to color. On to the next. For the calendar, I'm making a calendar box across 2 pages. You can see that I left gaps in the lines for some lemons and oranges later on. I drew a curvy border around the box. I didn't make the line perfectly straight because I thought this doodly look will fit better with the theme. I skipped the first day of May because it was on a week by itself. If you don't want to leave a day out, just add an extra box for that day in last month's calendar. Now it's time for the oranges and lemons. At this point I was still drawing lemons, but later on I colored them like oranges. So I guess it's an orange shaped lemon, or maybe it's a hybrid of lemon and oranges. Do you prefer orange marmalade or lemon marmalade? I've never had lemon marmalade, but I do enjoy orange marmalade. Apparently, jam and marmalade are 2 different things. Marmalade is specifically made with citrus, so it's kind of like a jam with only citrus fruits. I used to think that there was only orange marmalade, but there's actually all different types like grapefruit, lime, and any citrus fruit. My favorite citrus fruit is pomelo, which is like a gigantic grapefruit. If there is a pomelo marmalade, then I will definitely get it. Coloring was the most fun part. Marmalade has really diverse shades of orange. Since there's orange peels in it, it has darker orange spots. At the end of this video, I'll show you a real marmalade because I think the colors are very cool, especially in the light. You can see yellow, orange, dark orange, and even brown depending on the lighting. So I tried to capture all of those colors in my drawing. The green leaves are also very important. If you take a look at this page right now without the green, it looks really plain. But now once I add the leaves, you can see that it really makes the page look better. The oranges seem to pop out more and the page looks more full. The leaves add contrast to the page because they're really dark colors. So if you feel like that your drawing is really plain and dull, then try adding some really dark or really light colors for contrast. At the bottom, I'm writing a quote that says, "Turn the sour into sweet." This is more about lemons instead of oranges, since oranges are already pretty sweet. Now I'm making the highlights with the paint again. This is one of my favorite parts about coloring. I don't usually use acrylic paint in my spreads, but I think I should use it more because it's really satisfying to paint with. Lastly, I'm adding some grid washi tape. And here's the final result. Next is the brain dump. This page is where I can write my ideas, notes, video plans, and anything that I want. I always put the brain dump right next to the test tracker because I like to write my study plans in the brain dump. So it's good to put them next to each other where I can see my tests. That's another reason why I don't often do 2-page brain dump spreads. When I do a 1-page spread, it leaves space for the test tracker right next to it. So it's kind of nice to not have to flip the pages every time I want to see the test tracker. I drew lemons, oranges, and little marmalade jars for decorations. I'm making the fruit and jars overlap with each other. Not only does this save space in the brain dump section, but it also makes it look more interesting. I was inspired by some collages that I saw online which had elements overlapping, so that's where the idea came from. Now it's my favorite part, coloring the orange-lemon hybrid thing. I still color them like lemon-shaped oranges, so I don't really know what to call them anymore. Let's just stick with hybrids for now. It might seem like a small difference, but going over it with a yellow marker helps it make it look like a smoother blend. I'm using water-based markers, which are just like regular markers, so you can do this with normal markers too. To finish it off, I'm adding a darker pink to the plaid and some grid washi tape. This time I didn't tear the tape into strips because I wanted to cover a larger area. And we're done! Moving on to the test tracker. This page is for students to write down important tests. I'm drawing a table with rounded corners. This is the place where I'll write the information. Around the table, I drew some oranges and lemons. I also had to add a marmalade jar, of course. I made the same plaid title as the brain dump so that it would match. Then I'm coloring the items again. As always, I start with the lighter colors first and then I layer on darker and darker colors. So first I'm starting with yellow as the base. Then I add a lighter orange on top, overlapping the yellow. Lastly, I add a darker orange. I use 3 colors in total, but you can go even further and use more colors to make it look even more realistic. I didn't use a true orange shade for this, I mostly use yellowish orange colors. I went back to add some details and wrinkles in the cloth. The paint shows up more on darker colors, so make sure that you have fully colored in the shading before you put the paint on top. I always like to put a washi tape strip in the middle here. And here are the 2 pages together, they're super cute. Moving on to the next. This is the habit tracker page where I'll track how often I do my habits. I'm doing something a little different for the heading this time. So I'm drawing a jar with a white gap in the middle for the title. Since this is a bigger jar, I'm adding details like the wrinkles, the string, and even a tag. I also added a little spoon on the side. The writing on the title is cursive to look like a jar label. Then I'm drawing the mini calendars. There's 1 calendar for each habit. If you like my bullet journal spreads, I also have an Etsy shop with bullet journal printable download versions of my setups. I will be making this theme on my shop eventually. It won't be out immediately, but when it's available, you can use these spreads and fill them out. The boxes in the mini calendar are for each day. I'll fill in the box each day if I completed the habit. This theme is making me remember the time I made jam. Have you ever made jam before? I made a blackberry jam one summer because I had a large amount of blackberries. It was quite easy to do and it was super delicious. I never really have an excess amount of oranges or other citrus fruits, so I've never had the chance to make my own marmalade. Maybe I'll do it one day, but for now I'll just eat store-bought jam. Store-bought is still tasty though. I had some leftover black paint, so I used that for coloring the spoon. I was about to end with some washi tape, but I still have a few highlights and touch-ups to add. And now we're actually done. Next is the sleep tracker. This is where I'll track what my bedtimes are. I'm drawing a big lemon orange thingy as the sleep tracker. I'll show you how to use this tracker at the end. I wrote the dates on the edges of the circle. So now I'm splitting up the circle into 31 sections for each day. It's better to draw halfway until you reach the middle point of the circle instead of going all the way across to both ends. In other words, I'm drawing the radius instead of the diameter. This makes it a shorter distance so you can get straighter lines. On the edges of the sections, I made a curved line. This kind of looks like a real lemon orange. Make sure to make 31 sections instead of 30 because you need that extra section for the bedtime hours here. Now I'm drawing many circles to go with each of the hours. It took many tries for me to get these circles right, even with the items guiding me. Then I just freehanded 2 more rings in between to create the remaining circles. There are 5 rings for 5 different bedtime hours. This is the most complex tracker I've ever done, and it took a lot more time than usual, but it's really simple to use and I'll show you at the end. I have to add a jar of marmalade on every page, of course. Don't forget that this is a theme about marmalade, not lemons. After I erase the pencil marks, I'm going to color everything in. This pattern reminds me of my January 2021 cereal theme, where I also drew some plaid patterns like this. The shading is still the same. I used all 3 colors, but I put darker colors on the left side only. This theme is very summery, especially with how the plaid reminds me of a picnic blanket. After that, I'm coloring the jar. My favorite part of drawing the jars are the labels. I like to change them up for every jar, so it's kind of like a fun little touch. If you've noticed, I've been adding a subtle darker pink line on every plaid pattern. I colored this section with bedtimes in a different color. Now I'm going to show you how the sleep tracker works. Each day I will color in 1 triangle section. I will color up to the line that shows what hour I slept. Today I slept at 11, so I will color up to this line which goes up to 11. I'm only going to use yellow and orange to make it look like a lemon. So the later I sleep, the less will be colored in. It's easy to see if you slept earlier or later by looking at how tall each color block is. Now let's move on. This is where I'll write my to-do list and tasks for each day. I usually make my weekly spreads by the week, so I only do 1 in my video. I'm starting by drawing boxes with curved corners. I feel like this curved doodly look makes it look a lot cuter. This page is going to be filled with lemon and orange fruits. I'm drawing them spaced out similar to the cover page. At the bottom I have the marmalade. I decided to experiment with this one and make it into a different shape. When I was thinking about what quotes to put, I remembered this K-drama I watched a while back called Orange Marmalade. They said something about how orange marmalade uses up everything, even the peels which would otherwise be trash. So it's a positive message about how everything can be turned into something good. I thought that was a cute quote about orange marmalade, so I wanted to add it, but it was way too long for this tiny space. That's why I decided to go with a different quote. Anyways, if you want, you can add that quote into your spreads because I think it's a nice message. This line on the box is separation for my personal task. The rest of the box is for my school task. Since my quote was about jam, I felt like I should add a little jam to match. So here's the strawberry jam. It's different from the others but still matches the theme because it's pink. I also used the same highlight which has a yellow tint, but I think it kind of works. On the other side, I decided to do a marmalade. This page has really different jams, like different shaped jars and different colors. I felt like I should change things up, otherwise it would be boring drawing the same thing over and over again, right? As I mentioned before, I went with a different quote because I couldn't do the orange marmalade one. This one is go with your jam. I layered the pink and orange on top of each other to get a darker orange color. Okay, now we're almost done, but I want to know, do these look more like oranges or lemons? I'm sticking with both as a hybrid, but what do you think? Oh, and I almost forgot to do the highlights. These are important to add to the glass look and make the jars look yummier. Now it's time for my final flip through. This was very fun to make and it turned out to be very cute. Don't forget to check out my Etsy for bullet journal printables and look out for this spread on my shop in the future. Please give this video a like. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.